bit about what I do, what my job is. So I work for Vespar, which is a private company that is a project management firm, and I am a project manager and also a senior ecologist. And so in that role, I help to manage projects and get work in the door, make sure the clients are happy, that kind of thing. So our particular work that we do in our office in Newport News is we work with the Department of Defense, and we specifically work with them on natural resources management. So I guess kind of more to the point of answering your question, what do I feel like that I can do or that I do to contribute to conservation is working with DoD to help them manage their resources in a way that is compliant with federal law, and hopefully also really helps them to manage their rare species, their rare communities. I do a lot of wetlands work. My background here at CNU was wetlands ecology, and that was the sort of the credentials that I brought to this job, was working with them to do wetland delineations, wetland assessments, planning, permitting. I work on a lot of ecological restoration projects. Just recently got done working on a design for a 2,700 linear foot stream restoration. I didn't do the design, I managed the project, but we are also going to be implementing the construction on it. So that's the kind of stuff that we work on at the end of the day and can feel pretty good about.
Very cool. What would you say is the main environmental policy or general policy that influences your job?
For me, that's pretty easy, because there is something called the Sykes Act, which is a federal act which essentially tells the federal government that you need to follow specific regulations and guidelines to manage your natural resources. So the Sykes Act is behind really most all of the substantive natural resources actions at DoD. It's how they acquire their funding in a lot of cases, is compliance with the Sykes Act. The other really big one that I work with directly is the Clean Water Act. I think most folks are familiar with that, but with the wetlands and the streams restoration and even the delineation, all of those things are typically tied into Clean Water Act compliance in some way. So in a lot of cases, like the stream restoration I was just mentioning, that is a voluntary project. So it's not mitigation, it is just an installation that had a need and was able to obtain funding and has decided to do this on a voluntary basis. So anyway, those are the primary drivers of the kind of work that we get to do.
And lastly, what is one thing that you enjoy the most about your job?
I think that's also a pretty easy question for me, just because variety. I in a lot of places where you work, whether it be, and I've been able to work in different things. I worked at the university when I worked with Rob Atkinson. I was fortunate enough to be a research assistant there. I went to work for the state, and I worked for them for a year on wetlands regulations. I went to the Nature Conservancy and worked in the nonprofit world for 6 or 7 years, and I've been here in the consulting world for 10. So I'm that old, actually. But you can kind of get stuck in certain roles, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed about consulting is the variety. Just being able to, I'm working on a vegetation change analysis right now. I'm working on a 2,700 linear foot stream restoration construction implementation project. I worked on a living shoreline project last summer. I've worked on a revetment project for shoreline stabilization. I'm working on climate change projects. We're going to be doing a habitat assessment for Oceania to determine potential climate change impacts on their rare species and communities, and also just on their species and communities. So just looking into sort of forward-looking issues. So that kind of variety it's hard to get in a lot of places. So that's probably the key. My favorite project, that's difficult to answer. I have to dig back. I mean, I've probably had 40 or 50 for this particular, does it have to be for this job?
No.
Probably my favorite project was when I worked for the Nature Conservancy. We had we had a conservation corridor, which is just an area for wildlife conservation. A lot of land that had been identified, and several of the parcels were bought by the program that I worked in, the Virginia Aquatic Resources Trust Fund, and what we did with them was restore them back from cropland back into wetlands. So for me, it was really fun to be involved in wetland restoration, to be involved in kind of the easy ones. So a lot of this was prior converted cropland, but to have it situated in an area where I felt like it was really contributing to a greater good. And so that was actually something called conservation by design that the Nature Conservancy scientists and planners had come up with. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's not just taking land here and there because you'll donate it to the conservancy. It was, hey, we have a blueprint and a design to meet the goals and objectives that we have to preserve biodiversity. So for me, that was probably the most fun, was knowing that, I had 5 or 6 projects all in that corridor, and kind of felt like we really had a meaningful contribution to that end.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.